I wanted to present this book, The Adventures of Beagle, the Unimaginary Friend by Dan Santat. It was published in 2014 and is a modern fantasy book. And at first I was wondering if maybe it was just a picture book, because the pictures coincide very nicely with the moods and the feelings of the main character, who is Beagle right here. But upon this, I realized that because it deals so much in the real world and has quite an element of fantasy in it, that it is in fact a modern fantasy book. And modern fantasy is defined as something in a book that cannot happen in our real world. So kids might beg to differ about the imaginary friend part being fantasy, but it is a fantasy. It is a modern fantasy. So, have you ever felt lonely? I think all of us can say yes, I'm sure of it. Kids, adults, teenagers, I'm sure we have all felt lonely. And so one of the reasons why I love this book so much is because it talks about difficult things like loneliness. And one of the things about modern fantasy that I love so much is that with modern fantasy, you can, it puts a different spin on things. For me, this book put a new perspective on that difficult emotion of loneliness. Modern fantasy, in my mind, tends to do that, where we can get our answers to those difficult feelings and emotions we have through looking at the emotions of other characters. And fantasy is a great way to do that. Anyway, okay, so in this book, it starts off with these bright, wonderful colors. And you can tell by the colors that Beagle, right there, is happy. So it starts off with him being born, if you will, on this island of imaginary friends. They're imaginary and they're waiting for their friends. All of these imaginary friends have not been imagined yet, and so they all wait on this island together, living and playing, waiting for their friends on Earth to imagine them. And so one by one they get selected. Until Beagle is the last one. No one has imagined him yet. One of the things I love about this book is it teaches a lot of things. And one of my favorite things that it teaches is, if you want something, just go get it. Don't wait. Go get it. And that's exactly what Beagle does. He does the unimaginable. And look how happy he is by the colors. The reds, the turquoises, the yellows. I love it. You can tell he is happy because he is doing something bold. He is doing something brave. He is not going to let his circumstances define him. He is going to do something about it. So he decides to sail to the real world, something the imaginary friends have never done before. And as you can see here, the real world probably isn't anything he's used to. Look at all those colors. It's a pretty somber effect. It has a pretty somber effect on him. He reaches the real world, and it's dismal. All of the people walk around like zombies. They're in subways, they're going to work. They barely even notice anyone. They don't communicate. It's clear that this is the real world, and he doesn't like it. It's not what he's used to. Nevertheless, he decides to keep looking for his friend until finally he sees something familiar. Some color in a sea of gray and black. So he follows it. And it leads him to kids, lots and lots of kids. And they're in I would assume, a playground. And it's happy once again. So here he is, this imaginary friend who hasn't been imagined yet, looking for his child. And he doesn't have any luck. He keeps looking. He's gone so far. He's tried so hard. He's done things that no other imaginary friend has ever done before. And he's not having any luck until all of a sudden we see someone. They meet and they become great friends. She names him Beagle. Interestingly enough, he doesn't even have a name until she meets him. Her name is Alice, and they become the best of friends. They do everything together. They have inside jokes. They color. They play. And I'm not going to give away the ending, but I would highly suggest that you find out the ending. I will say, though, that she does the unimaginable with him, which I think is pretty great that it ties in that way. But I would highly suggest that you read this. It is a very good example of the genre of modern fantasy because it ties in elements of both worlds. He starts out in the world of fantasy and ends up in the real world, and I won't tell you where he ends up in the end. I'll let you guess or read it yourself. I chose this book because it taught me things. It made me feel things. The first thing it made me feel, like I said, was it made me feel that everyone gets lonely, and it made me feel like you can do something about your problems, no matter what they are. To not give up. We saw how he traveled so far and so long, and he still didn't find what he was looking for, and yet he didn't give up. He didn't go back to where he was from. Also, we learned that there is joy to be had even in the gloomiest of circumstances, which I think is very important as well. That life isn't all doom and gloom. It's bursts of happiness here and there. Another thing I learned from this is sometimes the most unlikely of people can be your friends. So they don't have to look like you. They don't even have to act like you. We have to be open and not stereotypical of people, and we can be their friends that way. This book also vibrantly celebrates imagination, which is another thing I really love. I felt like I was a kid again, and I was remembering some of my own experiences as a kid through this book, and I had forgotten that I too had imaginary friends, so that was pretty neat. Most important of all, it taught me that we are not alone. In the end, Beagle discovered this for himself, which was pretty great. So those are my favorite features, and that's the reason why I chose this book. Yeah, but it's a wonderful book, and I highly suggest you check it out.